Good morning and welcome to Africa This Morning. It is the 25th of February 2014. My name is Berry Laura. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the top stories.
Political paradigm shift in Egypt. Egypt's military-backed government has quit, paving way for Army Chief Field Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Quelling the Boko Haram insurgency. Nigerian military closes its northeastern border with Cameroon to isolate extremist movement. Protests in Mogadishu. Residents of Somali capital take to the streets in action against ongoing series of Al-Shabaab attacks. Ukraine politics. Days after the impeachment of Viktor Yanukovych, interim President Alexander Tachinov says the country will focus on closer integration with Europe.
Egypt's military-backed government has quit, paving the way for Army Chief Field Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to declare his candidacy for president. The decision was made after a 15-minute cabinet meeting. For Sisi to run for president, he would first need to leave his post of defense minister. Sisi unveiled a political roadmap meant to lead to elections after toppling President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in July following mass protests against his rule. Morsi's removal triggered the bloodiest political crisis in Egypt's modern history, with security forces killing hundreds of his supporters and jailing thousands. Hundreds of security personnel have also died in the turmoil. Nigeria's military says it has closed hundreds of kilometers of its northeastern border with Cameroon to stop the Boko Haram extremists from using the country as a haven and launchpad for attacks. Brigadier General Rogers Nicholas of the 23rd Armored Brigade said he was exercising emergency powers because it is imperative to seal the border between Cameroon and Nigeria's Adamawa state against illegal crossings. He said customs and immigration officials are working with soldiers and police to ensure that nothing crosses into Nigeria, especially considering large stretches that are porous border are generally left unpatrolled. Nigerian military claimed fighters have set up bases in sparsely populated areas of its northeastern neighbors, Cameroon, Chad and Niger, and used them to flee across the border after staging attacks to avoid military pursuit. The border closure extends from the northern Borno state by Lake Chad to the southern end of Adamawa state, one of the three states in the northeastern placed under emergency rule in May, following waves of attacks by Boko Haram fighters. Despite the state of emergency, Boko Haram has continued to carry out attacks in the northeast, with more than 300 people killed this year and thousands since 2009. On Wednesday, an attack by Boko Haram in Bama, some 60 kilometers from Borno state capital, Maiduguri, killed 60 people. Nigeria's former central bank chief Lamido Sanusi has described the president who ousted him as a simple man trying to do well and whose identity has been undermined by incompetent and fraudulent aides. Sanusi, widely respected by economists in Nigeria and abroad, was suspended by President Goodluck Jonathan on Thursday over alleged financial misconduct, a move seen by many analysts as politically motivated. In an interview in Lagos, Sanusi said many of the people advising Jonathan are sycophants who did not speak frankly about the extent of corruption in the government.
So when you sit with President Jonathan himself, you know, he appears a nice, simple person who's trying his best to do his best. And now his greatest failing, obviously, is that he's surrounded by people who are extremely incompetent, who are extremely fraudulent, and who he trusts.
Sanusi has accused the state Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC, of misappropriating $20 billion, approximately 14.5 billion euros, allegations that earned him powerful enemies across the government.
I think everybody has known that NNPC was rotten. I don't think it's ever been as bad as this, but if you go to different reports by NITI, by Transparency International, I mean, NNPC is notorious as the most opaque oil company in the world.
Sanusi learned of his suspension while in Niger for a regional meeting. He immediately returned to Lagos, where intelligence agents from the Directorate of State Services, DSS, seized his passport. On Friday, he secured a temporary order from the Federal High Court in Lagos barring DSS agents or police from arresting him. He argued it would be too simple to describe his removal as payback for his attacks on NNPC. The list of his enemies may have built over the years, but the NNPC affair appeared to be the final straw.
I would like to hope that this process which we have started taking this opportunity to improve governance and accountability in all sectors should continue. If I'm sacrificed in whatever way, my freedom or my life in this process, if it does lead to better accountability, it will be well worth it.
Jonathan, who has led Africa's most populous country and the top oil producer since 2010, is expected to seek another term in elections next year, but must first overcome unprecedented division within his own party. When Sanusi was removed just 4 months before his tenure was set to expire, analysts voiced their concern that Jonathan was seeking to sideline an increasingly vocal critic of his government's record on corruption. With malaria still making the top 5 leading causes of death for children under 5 years, researchers are calling for more investment in malaria control in Africa. The latest study shows that 57% of the continent's population still lives in moderate to high-risk chances of infection.
The study published in The Lancet shows substantial reductions in the malaria transmission in the most malaria-endemic African countries. Between 2000 and 2010, more than a quarter of the continent's population, around 218 million people, now live in areas with much lower risks of infection.
The results show that, on the one hand, it's been great that 40 out of the 44 countries where we were able to track change have shown reductions in transmission of varying degrees.
But while the report highlights significant gains in the fight against malaria, it also shows that 184 million people still live in areas where more than 50% of children carry the parasite that causes malaria. Researchers from the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, University of Oxford, and World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa say hundreds of millions of Africans run the risk of transmission if investment is not sustained.
There are cases where the level of reduction might be related to the degree of investment and level of coverage of malaria interventions.
According to the World Health Organization, malaria caused an estimated 660,000 deaths in 2010, mostly in African children.
Homegrown solutions to conflict situations in any African country is the best mechanism to heal a nation and bring reconciliation. This is according to Rwanda's ambassador to Kenya, Yamina Karitaya, who says that this is what Rwanda used to rebuild itself from the genocide that had totally destroyed that nation 20 years ago. Ebru Africa's news reporter Agnes Kakunga brings us that story of hope and reflection.
1994 is one year that the people of Rwanda and the whole world will never forget. It is the year that Rwanda was almost reduced to ashes. The country's two communities of Hutus and Tutsis turned against each other.
The genocide in Rwanda in 1994 was a planned and political campaign.
There have always been disagreements between the majority Hutus and minority Tutsis, but the animosity between them had grown substantially. Now, Kwibuka is a Rwandese word which means to remember. This is the time to reflect on Rwanda's darkest history as well as to learn from it. The genocide against the Tutsi, which started on 7th April 1994, was seen as the fastest killings on humankind history. In just 100 days, more than 1 million people were killed. It is now 20 years since the genocide, and Rwanda has risen again despite numerous challenges.
I say reconciliation is a process because we had to find the right thing, push the right buttons that made Rwandans say, this is something we need to do for ourselves. So it's like you forget a bit about you, but you think of the country. We think of the bigger picture.
The body of Rwanda was tortured, was assaulted. The body succumbed, but the spirit never did.
Rwanda has challenged other African countries that are going through violence or are still mending wounds after conflict situations to come up with homegrown solutions, terming that as the best mechanism to heal a nation. Critics have pointed out that the international channel is quite expensive and takes a longer time than local ways.
The UN tribunal in Arusha that was set up to deal with the cases in Rwanda has spent about $2 billion and tried less than 100 people. And we are 20 years down the line. So what do you say to that? Yes, it's international justice. But how does it help me as a Rwandan?
The young lady who were working in our home were marked to be killed. What would you have done?
This year, Rwanda will mark 20 years after the genocide. This Kwibuka 20 is very significant. It offers Rwandans the opportunity to reflect on the events of 1994 as well as the country's journey since. The theme for this year's genocide commemoration is Remember, Unite and Renew. It was carefully selected to reflect the future that Rwandans want to build. The celebrations will end in April.
The Senate has threatened to deny county governments money to run their operations if governors fail to appear before Parliament. In an interview with Ebru Africa's Hezbon Mugambi, Senator Bill Okero, in what appears to be a protest against the recent court rulings, said it will be hard to fund the counties without oversight.
It is close to a year since Kenya introduced the devolved system. One of the institutions created by the new constitution was the Senate. To critics, the institution is a waste of public funds and should be scrapped. But to Senator Bill Okero, the Senate plays an important role in protecting devolution.
The Senate is an essential institution in many parts of the world. The Senate exists to provide quality control in legislation or in the legislative arm of the government. So that whatever is done by one house can be subject to review by the other house. In Kenya, the Senate again plays the most significant role of ensuring the protection of the county governments.
Last week, the High Court overturned a Senate motion impeaching the Embu Governor Martin Wambora.
So, and this is similar, when the provisions of the Constitution are very clear that the Senate or the county assemblies have a mandate to carry out impeachment. As long as the motions and everything has been done properly before, it's up to the House. If anybody is aggrieved by the way the House has impeached him or whatever, then that's something you can raise later. But I think to stop the functions or the duties of Parliament, I think that the courts may have been trying to settle scores over some other previous issues.
During the same week, the High Court in Nairobi also made a ruling allowing county governors not to appear before the Senate Committee on Finance of allegations of misuse of public funds, as per the report of the Auditor General and Control of Budget. A ruling that has hampered the work of the Bill Okero-led Finance Committee.
The issues raised, really, in general, are issues, of capacity, of capacity for in the counties to manage issues, the staffing and so forth. The second issue is the low collection of revenue locally by the county governments, the failure to put in place proper financial management procedures, including failure by some of the counties to use the integrated financial management system.
The Senate now threatens to use their powers in resource allocation to counties to punish the governors.
We are very clear that when we vote for funds to be sent to the counties, we expect that the county governments, whose CEO is the governor, must be ready to account for those funds. I think if questions of accountability become problematic, clearly the Senate would feel constrained in releasing more resources to the counties.
For Ebru Africa News, I'm Hezbon Mugambi.
All right, thank you very much.
Kenya will start using new generation vehicle number plates soon. Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Infrastructure Michael Kamau says the number plates are hard to replicate or forge. Miriam Kanyugo has the report.
The Kenyan government will in future start issuing theft-resistant number plates. Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Infrastructure Michael Kamau says the move is aimed at tackling and reducing criminal activity associated with number plate theft.
First of all, the number plates are very important because they have security features. The police officer will be able to come to your vehicle, look at the number plates with a gadget that is able to read the barcode. After seeing the numbers, you'll be able to put a laser on your windscreen where you have the microchip, and then he's going to see whether it is KAA 500, whether they relate. Today, if I change my engine, unless I go for inspection, send it for inspection, and the alterations are done on the logbook. So all these features are what we are saying are going to enhance the security. And steering of vehicles, of course.
Those willing to customize their number plates will continue paying $1 million shillings, although the government will release a limited number.
Then, for those of you who want to have either personalized, we auction. We decide like this year, we are only going to allow maybe 100 number plates, and we auction. But we say the reserve price is $1 million.
On the issue of public transport safety, the Cabinet Secretary said they will crack down on public service vehicles that do not install the new digital speed governors that have been approved by the National Transport Safety Authority by the 1st of April.
The late Ebru Africa News anchor Reenah ShivisI was laid to rest at her family home in Western Kenya. Ebru Africa was present on the sad day as the final goodbyes were said to a beloved colleague. Our reporter Hezbon Mugambi brings us the story.
In a solemn ceremony attended by journalists, friends and relatives, Reenah ShivisI was buried at her father's home in Bumira village, Western Kenya on Saturday. Somber songs filled the air as hundreds celebrated Reenah's life. Friends and family members remembered the long and painful chain of events coming about 2 weeks after the family lost their father.
Reenah was an exemplary daughter, always happy.
She was everything a mother would want in her daughter. She put her family first and encouraged them to reach for their goals.
There is permanent life after death.
Which is a girl I envy. And I've always been telling my daughter I envy Reenah kwa sababu Reenah ni msichana ambaye amekuwa akirun maisha yake akiwa very responsible.
Colleagues from Ebru Africa TV also shared their experience of working with one of Kenya's rising stars in the media industry, eulogizing her as a loving, caring and hard-working colleague.
Alikuwa msichana yule ambaye anaweza kusukuma kazi.
She was hardworking. That's why we are here to bid her goodbye. We accept God's will.
Kama Mungu amesema ni hivyo, tukakubali na tuko hapa.
Reenah carried out her duties diligently.
To the family and friends, may you find comfort in the Lord.
She was a great person. You couldn't afford to be just a colleague. Her genuine interest in people made her an immediate friend.
And she was one exemplary character. There will never be anybody else like Reenah. And it absolutely breaks our hearts, but we just hope that her soul is at peace now.
Actually, in the industry, lost a great star. She was so good. And I know wherever she is, she's basically smiling at us.
Reenah was a good girl. I mean, she was a friend. And Mom and the family, I would like just to encourage you that the Bible says, those who die in the Lord, hawajakufa, they are just asleep.
A time must come in this family for the wind to respect and listen to the voice of Jesus.
While addressing the mourners, the preacher urged everyone to prepare their ways as death was inevitable. Reenah's earthly journey came to an end in Bumira village in Western Kenya, where her remains were laid to rest. Friends and family say death might have taken a life, but not the fond memories they shared. Reporting for Ebru Africa News, I'm Hezbon Mugambi.
With that, we come to the end of the Bulletin on Africa this morning. Join us shortly as we take a look at the leading stories on the social media platform with Cherotich Kinei.